Welcome to the City Current Show. I'm your host, Andrew Bartolotta. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making an impact here in the Mid-South and beyond. And today we're sitting down with veteran PR pro and author and civic advocate Marvin Stockwell, who launched Champions of the Lost Causes and Champion the Cause, a publicity practice, podcast, and platform. Marvin, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrew. I appreciate it.
Before we dive into Champions of the Lost Causes and Champion the Cause, give listeners an idea for your expansive journalism and nonprofit experience background leading up to starting your own firm.
Yeah, so I'm about a 20-year career pro in public relations, and probably a lot of people remember when I worked at Church Health because I was their spokesman. Founded Rock for Love, which grew into a kind of an annual weekend-long concert that benefited Church Health. I was a board member with Memphis Rock and Romp and emceed those shows for families. So a lot of people kind of knew me from those footprints. And then most recently, in terms of working for an organization, I worked for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital as their director of media relations, and I was laid off in May of 2021. But I'd already been setting certain things in motion, already been doing some work on the side, already been doing some consulting, already been doing some writing and some podcasting. So really the vehicle that I've now more kind of just directly and principally taken forward was really already in development before the layoff. And, you know, the pandemic had a lot of negative effects on a whole lot of people. And there's, you know, what can be said? It doesn't do any good to be upset with a virus. You know, the virus wasn't out to get me. So, yeah, I just I do have a journalism degree. I worked as a newspaper editor and columnist before I long ago, you know, in the early aughts, was a feature writer and a columnist for the Northwest Herald in Crystal Lake, Illinois, where my wife was going to graduate school up there at NIU. And came back to Memphis, did a brief stint at WKNO as their morning edition host and programs manager before I started working for Church Health and then St. Jude. And now here I am today with my own practice, Champion the Cause. And I'm finding that what I started at the outset just to kind of have some money coming in the door while I kept looking for the next job turned into, I really love the variety, you know, so eventually it's like, I kept being told I was overqualified for jobs, and I was just like, "Oh, okay, this is how this works." I mean, I'm not the swiftest guy in that regard, I guess, because I'm kind of wired as a company man. My dad worked for FedEx for 25 years. My father-in-law was a physics professor at Tennessee Tech for 35 years. So those as the kind of like templates is like, you know, you work someplace forever, and of course, younger generations do that less so. Even a Gen Xer like me, that's less true. And we've seen that trend just continue. So it was really a matter of the consulting work that I was doing and the project work I was doing. I just realized I loved it. And then the only thing standing in my way was what I originally kind of perceived as a scary boogeyman of like the business back end. But thankfully, I've got some good friends who helped kind of business coach me through that and act as my accounting coach. And now that I've gotten my feet wet with invoicing and just estimating my work and stuff, it's like, it's not as scary as I thought. So I'm just incredibly happy, and I'm glad that I'm able to take all that I've learned over my career and put it at the behest of other, you know, advocacy work, nonprofit work, you know, some for-profit work, but it all has a common thread of being, at least that's the goal, right? Is to keep it my goal is to keep it largely as centered around cause-based work as I can.
Talk about some of the lessons that you may have learned working for a smaller nonprofit focused around healthcare for all, and then maybe one of, you know, the largest nonprofits,
right,
focused on eradicating childhood cancer and diseases. Maybe for those that are thinking about going into the nonprofit sector.
Great question. Well, I've been incredibly blessed to work within organizations over my career. And I think the main take-home point for me working at Church Health is how to find a mission that maps over to your values And as a person of faith, it's hard to say whenever you cared for the least of these, you did it for me. I think is a great conceptual hook for any Christian. But the Jewish concept of repairing the world syncs up with the work of Church Health. So providing affordable healthcare to uninsured working people and their families. I mean, it's just like, that was incredibly gratifying work. And I was additionally fortunate to be there at a time of just explosive growth for the organization. When I joined Church Health, I was a communications office of one, and I had a 20-hour a week intern in 2004. And by the time I left in 2017, I'd grown the office to 6 people with a greater delineation of duties. So I learned how to staff up and share the work and do the work differently as I staffed up. So I kind of learned how to do that in a modular way. But more than anything, for me, Church Health was the template for a place that satisfied me on a very values. It satisfied me in a way that synced up to my faith that I found really refreshing. A lot of the same was true at St. Jude, although it was just at a much bigger level. It's one of the most recognized, global brands in the world. And so I learned that firsthand. You grow up in Memphis and you hear St. Jude and you think, well, that's the big thing in Memphis, right? But then all of a sudden I started traveling domestically, and I'd run into people. My Lyft driver in Pittsburgh would be like, oh, you're here. I see you're from St. Jude. Oh, wow. I donate. And my neighbor's kid went, so it's like, you go, okay, wow. And then you go to Singapore or Dubai, and you talk to oncologists from Iran, and they're telling you about the work of St. Jude and what it means to them for global cancer care. And you're just like, whoa. So it was an incredible honor to work for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. And I learned a ton. I fell back in love with science. So I didn't work for ALSAC. I wasn't in charge of fundraising. So I did the science pitching. I led the media relations team within the larger, more 20, 25 person comms unit on the hospital side. And I learned to do things that I didn't have to learn how to do at Church Health. I learned how to clear the higher bar of landing national and international media placements. I learned how trade media and local media vets you with top tier consumer media. And I learned how that ecosystem works, and how, like, if you can kind of get coverage at this level, then you can, over time, you can pitch and earn coverage at the national level. And then how all of print allows you to go chase after broadcast coverage.
Let's talk about your podcast for a minute. I'm a huge fan of tactical urbanism and people who really take it upon themselves to make positive changes in their own community and beyond. And Champions of the Lost Causes celebrates their efforts and really deep dives into what they've learned and the projects they've completed. What are maybe 1 or 2 of your favorite episodes? And then these people where they can go to listen for themselves.
Sure. Well, first off, Champions of the Lost Causes, the podcast, is on all kind of podcast platforms. So it should be pretty easy to find on Spotify or wherever you want to listen to it. If they want to know the kind of broader picture for the whole platform and read my free mini book, it's championsoftheLostCauses.org. And that has connections to the podcast and my blog and all sorts of stuff. So, but no, I appreciate you saying that. So Champions of the Lost Causes, the podcast, the idea came about when I was kind of couldn't stop writing this book. All these thoughts were coming to me about why do people champion causes? What sustains them? What helps them succeed? Why do I care so much about saving and reopening the Mid-South Coliseum, which my kind of genesis point caused? But then I thought, well, I don't want to just write this book about my own experience. I want to know why other people champion causes. So I thought, I'll have a podcast where I'll interview people who champion other causes, and I'll compare and contrast their work and mine. And the beautiful thing is I see common signposts of success, setbacks, retrenchments, alliances, and it is they have some of the same features, but of course each one is different, and the motivations are different, and the projects are different. But I love seeing the different manifestations of the variety of what that looks like. But the kind of founding summoning at the outset is the thing that's almost always the same. A person sees a problem, and they're like, or an opportunity, and they're like, I just can't not go do this thing. And it's almost like they push their ego aside, the kind of and when I say ego, I mean like the self and the ego, and they push that aside, and they just like their higher aspirational self can't help from seizing it. And it seizes the steering wheel and says, we're going in this direction. And before you know it, I mean, so my own cause, I didn't know that I was going to become the spokesman for a movement. I really started by trying to goad my friend Mike McCarthy into writing an op-ed for the Commercial Appeal, which I did. And I landed it for him and helped act as his editor. And then the thing blew up. A petition surfaced. I started planning a fairgrounds forum with restaurateur Taylor Berger to give everybody a chance to speak on the issue. And we got a bunch of press out there, PR guy by trade, right? So I get the press out there. And all of a sudden, leaving that thing, the media was already starting to hit, and my phone was blowing up saying, what are you guys going to do next? And I thought, next? I thought I was just being a good friend to helping my buddy get an op-ed. And yeah, the next thing I knew, we were off to the races and planning Roundhouse Revival and working with the Urban Land Institute's, team of ex-mayors coming into the city to do an assessment. I mean, and the project has continued to reveal things, call forth from us different things, and still be a lot of fun. But it's that genesis point to where common sense says, don't risk yourself, don't get involved. I actually had somebody a good friend pull me aside, won't name this person, pull me aside and said, Marvin, look, back in 2015, Marvin, come here, man. Hey, look, dude, I know you love Memphis. It's great. I love it. Don't get me wrong. But you have to know you're an up and coming PR guy. You're traveling in the right circles. You don't want to throw all that away for a lost cause, do you? I mean, they literally asked me that question.
Wow.
Like, I don't know why I didn't I was struggling to find the title forever. And then I finally remembered that conversation. It's like Champions of the Lost Causes. But like, of course I did. I couldn't turn back. I couldn't turn my back. And so similarly, Todd Richardson could not turn his back on the idea that kept him up nights. Like, you could do something with that Sears building. Right? Ginger Spickler, Crosstown High. We could reinvent high school and put a high school in Crosstown Concourse. Rashun Austin, she champions like a perpetual cause, which is affordable housing through the works. The people who stopped the pipeline, the people who protected the aquifer. Elizabeth Kawan, Music Export Memphis. She saw the opportunity to develop a suite of tools that could help musicians earn more money. It's like where we see how our gifts can fit in and do something novel, our kind of inborn, not only leadership skills, but our foundational belief in goodness. Like it takes that. Like the world will try to tell you that people are bad and the people are selfish and everything, but like, at our core, we're good. And if you kind of like rekindle that core belief in goodness, my goodness, your goodness, and in the inevitability of goodness winning out in the end. And if you believe that, you can't help but like involve yourself in these things. So it'd be hard for me to pick up. I mean, I've had Rashun on twice because I so admire her work and the stuff that the Works and Neighborhood Preservation Inc. are doing. So, but Dr. Morris, like certainly a champion of a cause, right. at Church Health, Danny Thomas. So once you start to spot that, you start to realize that it's more common than you'd imagine. And there are lots of good causes out there. And I think when those people just can't possibly not act, that's why I use the word summon, because it's almost not, it's not a left brain decision. It's a right brain decision. It's not a logical decision. Because if you tried to do it logically, you'd never start. I like to say it's like by the time you realize you're on a voyage, you're 3 miles out to sea with no land in sight, staring people in the face, your shipmates, and you're like, "Wait, what happened?" You don't think you're starting anything, and then it started, and then there's no turning back, which is good.
What puts a smile on your face when you look at your expansive career here in the Mid-South?
Honestly, just that, I mean, I'm a Memphis homer. I love Memphis. And I've been traveling with the band years ago before I had kids, and touring the US and touring the UK and Europe. I got to see the world. And honestly, working at St. Jude also let me see the world in a different way. So that's all been a blessing, but I keep coming back to Memphis. Memphis is a special city, and there are just lots of people who feel the same way I do. One of the projects I'm working on is the resurgent Young Avenue Sound, and my friend Elliot Ives. That man has been all over the world touring with Justin Timberlake's band, and he still says he feels the exact same way. It's like, I literally, years ago, I thought I'd be going out there and make my mark in some other city, but I keep feeling like this is the city where I want to do it. And I think Memphis has like my friend Christopher Reyes the same way. And I know so many people like that. So I feel that way. And to me, well, I want to do good for my city first and foremost because I love it. I think Memphis is a special city with a special history, which has not been all rosy, but I think warts and all, it's a city with incredible DNA, wonderful bones, as they say. And so I care about that, and I want to see it be its best. But you know what? I also want to set a good example for my wife and my 3 children. Like, I wanted them to grow up and see that, like, by the decisions that I make, that they grow up knowing that you dig down deep for what matters to you. And it's not always about how it could benefit you. The word benefit is kind of loaded if you think about it. Like, there's material benefits, pay and everything, but like the deep sense of satisfaction over questing after something and giving it your all is there's a special feeling and a camaraderie with your fellow people who champion a cause that's irreplaceable. I've learned so much and met so many people, not only in the Coliseum cause, but across my career. And it just makes me love my city all the more.
Well said. And I agree too. I think just I previously worked at Leadership Memphis, and just having the opportunity to sit at the table with local leaders, regional change makers. I mean,
Yeah.
It is a city like no other. And like you said, you can assert yourself in some really great, I sit around the room all the time and think how privileged I am to have conversations with some of these people. And Memphis makes it
Totally.
happen. Yeah,
That's true. Look at you now hosting this show. I mean, that's
and
like,
here we go. Yeah,
you're a conduit to raise it up. I mean, that's like, I've looked at you hosting that show and thought to myself, oh man, what a cool opportunity that is. But yeah, no, totally. And it's just about being open to it, and then just staying at it until a slot opens up. It might not be instantaneous, but if you want it, there's a slot for you.
Amen. I love that. Marvin, where can people go to learn more about you, your podcast, and support your efforts?
Sure. ChampionsoftheLostCauses.org is my platform, about why people champion causes, what sustains them, what helps them succeed. If they're looking to hire me, or if they want to need my help to bring me in on a publicity project, my kind of for-profit publicity practice is championthecause.org. And the sites are linked. So if you end up at one, you can find your way over to the other. I'm just at Marvin Stockwell on Twitter, and I'm on all the social media platforms. And again, my podcast, Champions of the Lost Causes, is on all the different platforms. And so check it out and drop me a line.
Awesome. Marvin, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for being a change maker here in the Mid-South and beyond. And we appreciate you powering the good in our community.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I really appreciate it.